In this movie, I'll show you how to use hue saturation to create a quick and dirty sepia tone effect. And it's really all about having fun with the colorized checkbox. So let's say I want to turn this image into a sepia tone. The first thing I want to do is figure out which color I'm looking for. And I'm going to want something that's a kind of dark orange, trending a little bit toward amber. So in other words, on the yellow side of orange, which makes me think about 40 degrees is going to work out nicely. So I'll go ahead and switch over to the image at hand. And then I'll bring up the adjustments panel and Alt-click or Option-click on the first icon in the second row. And I'll go ahead and call this guy Sepia Tone, and then click OK. And now I'll turn on the Colorize checkbox. When Colorize is turned on, hue becomes an absolute value. So notice the position of the slider triangle changes from the center to the far left-hand side, meaning that a hue value of 0 degrees is going to necessarily be red, and a hue value of 240 degrees is going to be blue, just as we're seeing on the giant color wheel. And so if I wanted green instead, I would go ahead and switch that value to 120 and so forth. And of course, the saturation value also becomes an absolute value. So if I set it to 58%, then the saturation of all the pixels will be 58%. And the only thing that will vary from one pixel to another will be its luminance. All right, but as I was saying, I want a hue value of 40 degrees, and I'm going to take the saturation value down to 20% like so. Now, anytime you're going with a sepia tone effect, it seems to me that the luminance levels should be a little bit bolder. So what I'm going to do here is bring up the adjustments panel once again and Alt-click or Option-click on the brightness contrast icon, which is the first icon in the first row. And I'll go ahead and call this layer bolder, and I'll click OK. And I'll reduce the brightness value to -20, and I'll take the contrast value up to 60 in order to produce this effect right here. Now, nothing says that your sepia tone has to be orange necessarily. You can go with any color you like. For example, where this turtle is concerned, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the balance and balance 2 layers, and then I'll just go ahead and click on the turtle layer to make it active. And I'll once again bring up the adjustments panel and Alt or Option click on the hue saturation icon, which is that first icon in the second row. And I'll go ahead and call this layer under C, let's say, and click OK. But this time I'm looking for a hue value of 240 degrees, which strictly speaking is blue, but has a little bit of violet in it as well. And I'll leave the saturation set to 25%. This guy already has a layer of darkness in the form of this brightness contrast layer, which is why it stands out nicely. All right, another great thing about colorizing an image is it doesn't bring out color noise. So let's say I just go ahead and click on this vibrance layer and press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. And I'll go ahead and double click on the thumbnail for this color exclamation point layer to bring up the properties panel. And I'll turn on the colorize checkbox, which is going to override everything that I've done in the image so far. It also dims that selective menu right there, and you can no longer select the targeted adjustment tool either. And that's because colorize affects all colors equally. And now I'll just go ahead and change the hue to 270 degrees, which is violet, and I'll take the saturation value up. And notice, even if I take it all the way to +100, we're not bringing out that same degree of noise we were when we were cranking up the saturation value in the previous movies. I'm really looking, however, for a saturation value of more like, I think, 40%, like so. And now let's create another bolder layer by clicking on the adjustments icon and then Alt or Option clicking on the first icon in the first row, which is brightness contrast. I'll go ahead and call this guy bolder once again. Click OK. That is more bold, not Boulder, Colorado, which is where I'm recording right now. And then I'll take the brightness value down to -20, and I'll take the contrast value up to 60. And then I'll go ahead and hide that properties panel once again. And that's how you create a quick and dirty sepia tone effect, whether it's really rendered in sepia or some otherworldly color here inside Photoshop.